Hello everyone, reporting today for Fun Robotics Network. I'm Abhas, and with me here is Team 17861 CSH from Romania. They were your Romania 2025-2026 Inspire Award winner, coming into the Houston World Championship with a 200 plus OPR and currently undefeated. Just absolutely fantastic robot, easily one of the fastest close robots here in Houston, but also absolutely deadly from the far zone. I can't wait to get into it coming up on Behind the Bot. All right, guys, so first question has to be about the drivetrain. You know, at Romania, you ran the swerve. It was really good, but here you went complete switch to the mecanum. Why do that?
Okay, so a big thing for us was the speed of the drivetrain. The swerve was not that agile on the terrain because it was very hard to control, and the precision was not there. So we moved on mecanum because it's more rapid, and the ratio that we use is a 1:12. So the 500 RPM really helps us to make the robot really fast.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that ratio. You know, usually we see teams directly connect to the motors, but you guys are running a very, very small gear right here with going up to a larger gear. So is that a 9-tooth gear, 8-tooth gear? What is that?
So the small one is a 9-tooth gear, and the big one is 108.
Okay.
So we choose this because we wanted to use bare motors, because we wanted to not use motors with gearbox because they are way heavier. So that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, and as far as like backlash or having to apply like grease or lubrication or anything like that, is that something you guys have had a concern with, or it's been really smooth?
So we are just using a WD-40 for this, so it's not really a big problem for us.
Before we get to our next segment, we'd like to thank the following. DECODE Robotics is inspiring teams to build better robots with their new array of FTC team options. Check out their updated bevel gears and Maverick hex shaft motors, planetary gearbox options, and 6mm hex components and shafts for extreme power transmission. Go to studecode.com/robots to learn more and apply for discounts. Kettering University's cutting-edge programs in their experiential co-op model seamlessly blend the professional and academic worlds, offering hands-on, feature-focused learning that empowers students to pursue new ideas and inspires other institutions to follow their lead. Don't just be ahead of the curve, create the curve. Get more information at kettering.edu/first.
Awesome. Yeah, let's turn to the intake now. We'll talk about the climb PTO later, but right now I want to talk about the intake. You guys are just so smooth with having like all of the artifacts come into your intake. I think we can show like a quick cycle. Let's talk about funneling. How do you guys make sure that when you take in 3 artifacts, they funnel properly every single time?
So for this, we are using these springs, which guide the balls really well from every corner of the terrain. So it's really easy for us to collect from everywhere, and it's very constant.
Mm-hmm. Are those like passive rollers that you guys have had been on the robot the entire season, or did you add them at some point?
We just added them at some point. Like, we iterated a lot on the intake. We had a lot of iteration of the robot. We have like 4 robots this season.
Wow.
So each one had a different intake, so we iterated a lot on this.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And talking a little bit about the springing you guys have here as well. So is that via like rubber bands, via spring? How are you doing that springing?
Yeah, so basically we're using these 2 springs on the side so that when we are intaking 3 artifacts at the same time, they usually keep the 3rd ball inside, so that we cannot actually control multiple artifacts like this. And after we collect the 3rd artifact, the intake raises up a little bit so that it does not touch any other artifacts that are on the ground.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I also see a couple sensors over here. I see some wires going over here. So what sensors are you using and how?
Yeah, so we use 3 beam brake sensors for Auton and for Teleup. For Teleup, we mainly use it for this LED right here, so that even if the robot is turned away from the driver knows when he has 3, and in Auto, it's for when we collect from the gate, so that we know when to leave.
I see. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Is there any like filtering you've had to do with those beam brakes to make sure you're getting good data? Or like, I know teams have had issues with the beam brake going through the hole in the artifact. Was that a concern you guys had, or not an issue?
The fact that the beam brakes go through the holes is something we do have, but it doesn't really matter, because we from the way the beam brakes are positioned, we can't get false positives. So if we get a signal from all 3, it means that we actually have 3 balls, so we can just continue.
I see. Okay. Now, one of definitely the most innovative things on your guys' intake is that PTO. Walk me through that. I think very few people know about this mechanism, and I think it's really going to be a very popular implementation in future seasons. So talk to us about it.
Yeah, so how it works, when you have 3 balls in the robot and we are going intake, the last roller is not rotating, so it helps us for the intake to not stall. and we want to shoot these this PTO engages, and the lateral rotates so we can shoot very fast.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so clever. So what is exactly that engagement mechanism that you're using for the intake?
So it's just a servo right here, and a little arm that moves this sprint, which has like a cross on it right here, and it just engages with these screws right here, and the last roller is rotating.
That's awesome. As do you have any like fail safes? Like, you know, if the servo doesn't work or the spring doesn't engage, like how do you make sure that the intake is always able to push through and transfer? Has that not been a concern?
So we do not have failsafes for that PTO. The main idea with that PTO was to make it as simple as possible and to do constant maintenance on it. That way we can also reduce on weight and make sure that everything runs smoothly.
Yeah, and since it's passively powered, if you ran your intake anyways, would the transfer just like continue up through the shooter?
Yes, it would, but it
Okay.
will not shoot the last ball.
Okay, I see. That makes sense. So now talking about your shooter, you know, you guys are running the counter roller shooter. We've seen a ton of teams use it throughout the season. Have you guys had it since day one, or was that an addition you made later in the season?
No, so actually we made this before the national championship in our country because we wanted to be more precise on the far zone because of the swerve. So we concentrated on it to be very precise, and we iterated a lot on the counter rollers. We tried with 2 rollers, with 1 roller, and this is the best way.
Yeah, talking a little bit about speeds and ratios here. Typically, how fast does your main roller run, and how fast do your counter rollers run?
So the main roller is about running at, I think, 3,500 RPM, and the counter rollers are about 4,000 and a half. I think something like that, around this.
Yeah, and you know, I think concerns that teams have had with these is like increased friction and reduced efficiency. Was that something you guys faced, or how did you overcome that?
So yeah, we faced that when we changed the compression of the balls. But now the compression is like 7 millimeters, and this works very well for us.
I see. Is that 7 millimeters on like the nominal like 5-inch artifact, or 7 millimeters on the 4.9 like smaller?
On
artifact?
5-inch.
Okay,
On 5
I
inch.
see.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, as far as you know, having your hood be very robust, it's super stable. How did you guys do that, and what advice do you have for teams on that front?
Yeah, so we have right here these 2 aluminum small arms that actually are rotated here from the servo for the hood. It has here a mechanical block so that they cannot go out of position, so that they don't disengage from the servo, and they are held here by the screw.
I see. And yeah, one thing that I think is really important with your guys' robot is you're very efficient with the servo usage. You know, I've seen teams that use 2 servos for the hood, 2 servos for the pivot, 2 servos for the flicker, like all these places where you guys only use 1 servo. How do you decide how many actuators you need, and why did you decide to like keep it very, you know, bare bones and efficient on that front?
So because we iterated through so many robot designs and had so many robots built and tested on the field, we knew how to make the most efficient and simple mechanisms for each of the subsystems. That's why we knew how to minimize the servo usage.
I see. Now, talking a little bit about your guys' turret as well, how is it actuated? I think, is it a motor-based turret, or is it a servo-based turret?
Yes, so it is a motor-based turret. It is a 4:1 ratio, and it uses a simple anti-mark bearing.
I see. And as far as homing and localizing this turret, how do you do that?
Yeah, so it's mainly on the geometry localization. That's how we localize the goal. We also have some shooting while moving, which moves the goal when we're moving. And in case something happens to our localization, we also have the limelight right here, for which we can relocalize with the April tags. And in case even that doesn't work, we can just turret lock, we can constant RPM, and make sure we can still score.
Yeah. And what about knowing where the turret is at the beginning of the match? How do you set that 0 position?
So we set it manually. We do not have an absolute encoder. At the start of the season, we thought that we would need one, but after testing, we realized that it doesn't really help us as a team, and it just adds a little bit more weight that we can shave off.
I see. So you just make sure the turret is like always straight at the
Yes.
beginning. That's it. Okay, I see. Yeah, next thing we have to talk about is definitely the park. Is this something you guys have had the entire season, or did you only add it in preparation for nationals and worlds?
So we added at the nationals the first time, but it wasn't a PTO back then. Back then was just 4 servos that lift us up. So now we have 2 PTOs, as you can see right here. You can see this small print plate engages with is engaged by the springs with the gear, and it's actuated by these two motors from the drivetrain, and this is how we lift up.
I see. And you guys made your own ratchet as well. Is that true for this?
Yeah. So it's a custom ratchet that we made. We wanted to make it like this because of the compact design, and it's just very simple, not a big deal.
And are you guys using micros for the PTO engagement? Is that what I saw?
Yeah,
down
there are
there?
micros.
Okay, so have you had any like load issues with that, or they've been like really consistent, and you would recommend teams use micros for PTOs?
First time when we tried them, the arms from the micros were made out of print, so that's when we had problems with them because they were like warping and stuff. But when we added the aluminum arms, and it's okay. I mean, it's working pretty well.
Yeah, and talking a little bit about like 3D printing and different materials, I noticed you guys also have resin printed plastic pulleys over here. Why did you go for those instead of like FDM printed or like a machined like aluminum pulleys?
Because they are much smoother than the print, and the resolution on the resin printer is much higher.
I see. That makes sense. Now, last thing I want to cover with you guys, CSH, is your drive practice and drive strategy. I mean, we just saw that match. It would be 120, 115 artifacts. Just absolutely lights out, so consistent. What's the secret? What can teams learn from you guys?
Yeah, so from the beginning of the season, we knew that diver practice would be one of the key elements for scoring as much artifacts as possible. As a strategy of the game, we used to play at our national championship only the fire part of the game. But after the national championship, just like last year with the specimen strategy, we tried to be good at both because we didn't know what to expect here at the World Championship. So we knew that by being good at both, we can actually achieve the maximum potential of the robot. With our intake PDO and our constant shooter, we knew that by leaving the shooter as he was a national championship because it worked out great, we knew that we can actually achieve both zones, the far and the close. And from the far zone, we usually just make as many cycles as possible and as fast as we could. And from the close zone, we usually just intake from the gate, because if we have a far zone robot that can actually score artifacts, we just have a big flow so that the gate cycles are extremely fast.
Yeah, but as far as like when you're on the practice field, are you guys running full matches? Are you guys running drills? How do you decide what to do and how to hone your skills best?
Yeah, so for even testing the robot, we are usually practicing a lot at our hub, and that way we can even see what works and what doesn't. And our practice matches are basically made out of 2-minute practice tally-up matches that are like trying different strategies and just making different types of cycle and putting the robot in situations that you might actually have in an official match. And that's like the perfect way to practice and to achieve like
absolutely. CSH, thank you guys so much. I mean, you've had such a fantastic season. Everyone was so excited to see you qualify for the World Championship, and you guys have been playing just so fantastic so far. So best of luck for the rest of the competition. We can't wait to see how you guys do. Reporting for Fun Robotics Network, I'm Abhas, and this is Team 17861 CSH. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to stay up to date on future fun videos. Kettering University's cutting-edge programs and their experiential co-op model seamlessly blend the professional and academic worlds, offering hands-on, future-focused learning that empowers students to pursue new ideas and inspires other institutions to follow their lead. Don't just be ahead of the curve, create the curve. Get more information at kettering.edu/first. Studica Robotics is inspiring teams to build better robots with their new array of FTC team options. Check out their updated bevel gears and Maverick hex shaft motors, Planetary gearbox options, and 6mm hex components and shafts for extreme power transmission. Go to studica.com/robots to learn more and apply for discounts.